Hi, this is Mr. Ng for the Chapter 1, Chapter 2 test for Algebra 2. Multiple choice questions. Find the slope of the line graph below. You should be able to identify from left to right the graph is going down, so that's negative slope. So automatically you should eliminate A and D. Well, you can use the equation for slope, or you can just say down 2, right 3. A rise of negative 2 and a run of positive 3, that'd be choice B. Number 2, find the domain and range for the absolute value function below. Here it is, my center is at 3, 4, not as important. Remember, the domain's going from left to right. In this case, they're giving us by, you can see by all the answers, those are by inequalities. So as I go from left to right, first thing I touch is the arrow, and the last thing I touch is the arrow, which means it's all of the negative numbers and all of the positive numbers, therefore it's all real numbers. Your range here, though, is from your y values that are less than 4. This is the reason why this is the answer. If you take your order pair, this is 3 on the x-axis, and then the y-axis going up 4. So from bottom to top is the range. First thing you touch is the arrow, which means all of these negative numbers, and then I stop at 4. Assume that because it's a solution here, that's a closed circle, so that means you include y is less than or equal to 4. A common mistake, which I initially thought was B, that's incorrect. Remember, all multiple questions are worth 2 points. Number 3, what is the slope of a line parallel to 2x minus 3y equals 6? So I'm going to change this into slope-intercept form. Subtract 2x, divide by negative 3, I get y equals 2/3 x minus 2. And my slope tells me a line that's parallel because the slopes are the same if they're parallel. So D is your answer. Question number 4. Find the x and y intercepts of y equals 3x minus 3. Well, your y-intercept already is, it's in slope-intercept form, so your y-intercept is negative 3, which I have these two right here. So it's now between C and D. To find your x-intercept, you just make y equal to 0. And solve, add 3, divide by 6. X is equal to 1/2. Here's our choice D. Question number 5. Write the equation of a line in point-slope form that passes through the points 3, 4, 2, 1. So you need to find slope. You can either use that through the slope equation, or you can use point-slope, which I did here. Label my order pairs, substitute it, and your slope is 3. Once you know your slope is 3, I pick the order pair 3, 4, and substitute it in, and I got this here, which is D. Now, if you pick the other pair, order pair, and you still have the same slope, this would have been your choice, but notice how they switched here in B. They switched the order pairs. Question number 6. Give the vertex of the absolute value function. So here, I'm going to write this plus sign as a minus, so I have x minus negative 1. And the reason why I'm doing that here is that notice how there is a subtraction or negative sign in the equation, so therefore h is negative 1. H is negative 1, k is negative 2, the vertex is negative 1, negative 2. Question number 7. What is the slope of the line perpendicular? So perpendicular slopes, their products are negative 1, or the slope of one line is the negative reciprocal of the second. So if I change standard form into slope-intercept, I have 5/3. The reciprocal of that is 3/5, and the opposite is negative, so negative 3/5 slope. Question number 8. Write the standard form of an equation of the line that has a slope of negative 4 and passes through the point negative 1, negative 5. So if they've given me slope and a point, that's point-slope form. There it is. Substituting my slope, my point is 1. Remember here, my y value is negative 5, so the opposite of negative 5 is a positive 5. They want this equation in standard, so which means I'm going to have to distribute here. Negative 4x minus 4. I want my x's and y's on one side, so I'm going to move this 4x to the left here, and have 4x plus y equals negative 9. And this is letter choice A. Your leading coefficient in standard form must be positive. That's the reason why B is incorrect, and you can't have fractions as coefficients. Question number 9. Which of the following is one of the solutions for the absolute value of 5x minus 2 equals 8? Well, the absolute value sign here is isolated, which means now your argument is now one is positive, one's negative. You can add 2 and divide by 5, you get x equals 2. Notice how I don't have that as one of my solutions here. So let's look at the negative argument. So negative 5x minus 2 equals 8. Divide both sides by negatives. You get 5x minus 2 equals negative 8. Add 2. Divide by 5. X equals negative 6/5, which is A. Number 10, evaluate g of 3 for g of x equals x squared minus 3x. The g of 3 says essentially your x value is 3. So substitute that in. You get 9 squared minus 9, which is 0. G of 3 is 0. Choice D. Number 11, that was a little bit squished and difficult to read. So if you rewrite it, it's 7 plus 1 squared minus 16 divided by 2 plus 6 divided by 3. So in PEMDAS, remember you're doing these as chunks as I go left to right. So the first thing I see here is the parentheses. So I do 7 plus 1 is 8. A common mistake is to think you can distribute that exponent. Again, you can't do that until it's multiplication, but you have addition here, so you can't do that. So I have 8 squared. That's the only thing I've done so far. So going from left to right, I'm going to do now exponents. So I have 64 minus 8 plus 2. I have no multiplication or division. Or my division, sorry, I did here, going left to right, is negative 16 divided by 2. Gives me negative 8. And this is a positive 6 divided by 3. This gives me 2. And then left to right, I'm going to do addition and subtraction. So here's the reason why it's left to right. You're not just going to skip over here to the positives. You're just going to go left to right. So this is a chunk. So the first chunk I see is subtraction. So 64 minus 8 gives me 56. 56 plus 2 gives me 58. A is your answer. Number 12. I have absolute value of x plus 2 is less than or equal to 4. It's isolated, so which means I can split this, one positive, one negative. The reason why you're using the keyword and is because when it's less than or equals to for an absolute value, you're going to put the word and there. And you can combine this answer. When you combine your answer, you have both have an x. Put smaller number on the left, that's negative 6. Larger number on the right, that's 2. Match the inequalities, and it'll be their choice C. Question number 13. Evaluate h of negative 3 given h of x. So they've given you two functions, essentially a piecewise function, and now you're just taking your value here. So if x is negative 3, you're going to have to pick which inequality is true. Well, negative 3 is not bigger than 0, so I'm not choosing the second one. I'm choosing the first one. Negative 3 is less than or equal to 0. That is true. Because if you graph this, that would be on quadrants 2 and 3, and that's where x is negative 3. So you substitute in negative 3 there, you'll get 9 plus 12, which is 21, which is choice B. Question number 14 is probably the most missed question on the test. Which of these statements is true? Now, notice how I have Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3. And what I've done is, because I have no values for x, I've picked 3 numbers. And these are relatively good numbers to pick. A negative number, 0, and 1. Notice how I go through each of these. If I put in negative 1 here, absolute value of negative 1 is 1. Opposite of negative 1 is 1. Absolute value of 1 is 1, so they are equal. You can do the same thing. Negative 1 minus 2 is negative 3. Absolute value of negative 3 is 3. 2 minus a negative 1 is 2 plus 1, which is 3, and those are equal. But look what happens here at choice 3. If you substitute in a negative 1. Opposite of negative 1 is positive 1. Absolute value of 1 is 1. Well, if x is equal to negative 1, you can't have 1 equals negative 1, so it doesn't work there. And you can do that for the rest. Checks means it does work. Therefore, the answer is B. 1 and 2 only. Number 5, you have an exponential graph. And you should be able to determine the domain and range here in interval notation. Domain is going from left to right. Notice here that I haven't touched the graph yet until here, which is at 0. Include 0 because it's a closed circle. And as I go to the right, last thing I touch is the arrow, which means it goes into infinity. So essentially, you only have choices now A, C, and D, and you've eliminated B because you're not starting at 0. Now for the range, I'm going to start from the bottom here. I'm not touching anything until I reach 1. So the 1 is the very first thing. So that's not this one. that one. The only one that has that there is, sorry, negative 1 is D. You're going from negative 1. The last thing you touch is the arrow again. The arrow means it keeps going up forever. Number 16, multiple choice of a piecewise function. You have x plus 2 is less than 0. So that's an open circle. You have positive slope. So I don't see any positive slopes here. I see a positive slope here, but this is greater than 0. So I can't choose D. X plus 2 here, but this is a closed circle. This has to be open. And that's this one right there. And then x plus 1 is less than 0. This is this one here. X plus 1 here, y-intercept of 1, slope of 1 over 1. X is greater than or equal to 0, goes towards the right. The answer is B. Question number 17. Graph on the coordinate plane. Make sure you label all your intercepts. I have a lot of students missing this question, is that they can actually graph this, but they don't recognize that the inequality is shading. So again, slope-intercept form. 7/2 is my y-intercept. To find your x-intercept, you're essentially making to find your x-intercept, you're making y equal to 0. Subtract that, you get negative 7/2. To get rid of this reciprocal, multiply by negative 2/3, and you'll get x equals 7/3. It's a dotted line because I have greater than, and you can use your test point over here, 0, 0, this point right here, and essentially all of the points on this side. Substitute in 0, 0, you get 7 is greater than 0, which is true, which means where 0, 0 is, and every single point over here will be a solution. In this problem, you got 1 point correct if you labeled the y-intercept, 1 point for getting the x-intercept labeled, 1 point for the dashed line in this problem, and also 1 point for shading the correct region. Question number 18, graph on the coordinate plane. Make sure you label all the intercepts in the vertex. So I have an absolute value. Now you should just be able to identify the key notations here and identify that it's going to look like a V. So I'm going to write this, this plus sign is going to be changed to x minus negative 4. That essentially means my h value is negative 4 and my k value is 1. So negative 4, 1 is my vertex. Negative 1/2 or negative tells me my graph is going to open down and it actually is going to get wider. To find my x-intercept, make y equal to 0. So instead of h of x here, I'm just going to change that to y, and the y turns into 0. I will subtract 1. I'm going to get rid of this coefficient by multiplying by its reciprocals, which is negative 2. I get 2 equals absolute value of x plus 4. Split it now because the absolute value signs are isolated, and you'll get negative 2 and negative 6. To find your y-intercept, make x equal to 0, and you'll get negative 1. I scored this problem as is. 1 point for finding the vertex, 1 point for both the y-intercept and x-intercept, or if you got one of those, it'll give you 1 point. 1 point if you recognize that the graph is just an absolute value, or v, and 1 point if you recognize that the a coefficient helps the graph open down. Question number 19. Graph on the coordinate plane, make sure you label your intercepts. Okay, so here I'm just going to get x by itself, so add 3 to both sides to get x is less than or equal to negative 1. So here is a vertical line, and if you forget it's a vertical line, just make sure you're making all the x values negative 1. Make up your y values, negative 1, 0, negative 1, 1, negative 1, 2. It's going to be a dashed line because it's less than. And to test which side you're going to shade, looks like I've shaded both. So if I put in 0, 0 here, I get 0 minus 3, which is negative 3. Negative 3 is less than negative 4. This is false. So the order pair is 0, 0. This is false. So green is not, should be there. My solution is there in the red. 1 point for the x-intercept, 1 point for solid dash, 1 point for shading the correct region, and 1 point for the graph that you recognize that is just a vertical line. So if you just graphed it here at negative 1, you probably got 2 points out of 4. Question number 20. Graphing the piecewise function. Make sure you label your intercepts and endpoints. So here I have a constant c of x, or y is equal to 5. All your y values are 5 here. Open circle. greater than negative 2, which means you go to the right. 3 minus 2/3 x, you could just rewrite that. Negative 2/3 x plus 3, so plus 3 is my starting point. But notice how it's negative slope, so it's going that direction. X is less than negative 2, so you can be going that direction, so a plus sign. Remember, it's at the boundary, or the restriction there at negative 2. Okay, so how do you get that number? Well, you can substitute in x equals negative 2. Here, negative 2 times negative 2/3 gives me positive 4/3. 3 plus 4/3, that changes to 9 over 3. 13 over 3 is that point. Negative 2, 13 over 3. I give you 1 point for, we got one of the graphs, 1 point for your circles, open and closed, 1 point for your intercepts and your endpoints, and then 1 point if you got the second graph. Essentially, if you graph this correctly without the endpoints or intercepts, it gave you 3 out of 4. Question number 21, use the graph in question number 20. So you had to graph this correctly, the one above. See if I can fit it all in there. Inequality for the domains, left to right, arrow. Here it's continuous because you still have a solution at that point. Go to the right. You have all real numbers. Range from bottom to top. First thing you touch is that point, and you can keep going on forever. Remember, there's a solution here at this point there, the open circle. So y is greater than 13 over 3. If you got some other number, I give you at least half credit, 1 out of 2. Interval notation, anytime you have all real numbers, it will be negative infinity, positive infinity. Remember, make sure it's always parentheses with infinity. And interval notation for the range. As you go from bottom to top, you'll start here at 13/3, and you'll go on forever to infinity, so that's positive infinity. It's 2 points per box, and -1 for a mistake. Question number 10. Use the same graph in question number 20. So a lot was writing on that, you could just graph that correctly. Evaluate f of 4 of 5, f of 0, and f of negative 4. So f of 4, you're just essentially going here, and then you're looking for the y value there, which is 5. F of 0, same thing there. F of negative 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, if it's negative 4, you can actually just pick which of the piecewise functions. Well, negative 4 is less than negative 2, so you just substitute in negative 4 into the x value there. Negative 4 times negative 2/3, just multiply across, negative times negative is positive, 8 over 3. 3 becomes 9 over 3, and then you get 17 over 3 is your answer. There are no x-intercepts. Notice how none of the graph crosses the x-axis, and your y-intercept there is at 5. 0, 5. So each of these were 2 points each. Last page. Write an equation for the piecewise function above. So let's go ahead and do this one going this direction. Here, my restriction's at -6. It's becoming, the x values are getting bigger, so that's x is greater than or equal to. Remember, it's equals to because it's closed. Essentially, I'm just going to figure out slope, so that's up 1, right 3, up 1, right 3. So my slope is 1/3, and my y-intercept is 6. 1/3 x plus 6. Here, my restriction here is at the line -6. To figure out my slope there, I decided to use, just to figure out my slope. So essentially, let's just say you pick this point, it's down 2, right 1. So -2 is my slope. And then I picked this order pair, -6, 0. I have a point, I have the slope, I can use point-slope form. Don't forget to distribute all the way through, and you have gotten y equals -2x minus 12. If x is less than -6. So that's your piecewise function. Question number 23, I made extra credit. You're just solving for the z variable. I wanted to get rid of this fraction, so I have, remember you can assign this here. So I'm multiplying both sides by -3. I have -3x equals 2y minus 7, or minus z. I'm going to get z by itself, so I just thought it was easier to add z. then add 3x to both sides. And when I did that, I get z equals 2y plus 3x. The last question, number 24, which of the following is or are no solutions? So you're looking for no solutions. Circle all that apply, if none, circle none. So I scored this problem by 3 points for correct and -2 for each are wrong. So the correct problems, we call it multiple choice, is D, E, B, just those three. If you distribute A here, 3x minus 12, let's just say you add 12 and then you subtract 3, you get 0 equals 0. 0 equals 0 all the time. That's all real numbers. But remember, I'm looking for no solution, so I'm not circling A. B here, you need to think of a number that's bigger than 2 and a number that's less than -1. Well, if you graph this, open circle, this is actually an OR problem, but I have the word and, which just essentially means you can't find a number that's both bigger than 2 and smaller than -1. The answer is no solution. So I'm circling that. That's why it's an answer. C, go ahead and distribute there. Combine like terms. If I subtract x there, I have -2 is less than 8. -2 is less than 8. That is true. That is always true. That is all numbers, all real numbers. D here, distribute. If you add 2x to both sides, the x's disappear. You have 8 is greater than or equal to 16. This is false. This is no solution. 8 is never greater than or equal to 16. E divided by -2, no solution. There's no number, when you take the distance to 0 will be -3/2. So that's why E is no solution. F, we distribute there. Combine like terms, you notice they're the same, it's all real numbers. And E, if you found the slope between these 2 points, I wanted to test if you guys understood the difference between undefined and 0, and this is undefined, and this is not no solution. I hope this test correction was helpful for you in studying for your finals.